Chapter 4, Essentials of Illinois School Finance. The PTELL, so the acronym for Property Tax Extension Limitation Law, of course, is the PTELL. It's basically the tax cap. PTELL is Illinois Code 218-185. It's just a fancy term for the tax cap, and it stands for the Property Tax Extension Limitation Law. It became effective in 1991 and for school districts and non-home rule districts in DuPage, Kane, Lake, McHenry, and Will counties. Later on, it expanded to 1994 to Cook County, and then 33 more counties adopted the tax cap by referendum. You can take a look at that in your textbook. Tax cap hasn't been approved by any county since 2002, and 10 counties have rejected the measure. This is primarily due to politicians not wanting a tax cap. Anytime there's a cap on taxes, you're going to limit the revenues. And when revenues are limited, you're looking at budget cuts. And with all the line items that we have in a city, a state, a county, and local, no one, especially politicians, want to limit the taxes. The purpose of the tax cap, though, is to control the growth of property taxes. Tax caps do control the growth of expenditures by limiting source revenue, so that's pretty obvious. I mean, if you have a tax cap of 2% and you're used to getting 2.5 or 3%, you obviously cannot spend as much money as you were in previous years. Tax caps can be horrifying due to a district because of mandatory budget cuts. If taxes are capped, you have less money for the levy. Also controls the tax revenues for schools, parks, and other home rule districts. Here's a chart, table 5 in your textbook, of the year of enactment of Property Tax Extension Limitation Law. 5 counties for the first year, 1991, DuPage through Will, and then 1994, Cook County extended a tax cap. But if you look below, right here, you'll see that the base year for the debt service extension base was 1994. So this is the first year of the tax cap. This is the first year of the tax cap for Cook County, but it's also the base year of the debt service extension base. And then other counties basically found suit. So the cap limits the increase to the lesser of 5% or the 12-month rate of inflation as measured by the CPI. So it's going to be beneficial for you to understand the Consumer Price Index. All right, these are the prices that everyday citizens like you and I look at paying for goods. Anytime the Consumer Price Index goes way up, that can be problematic for consumers. As you can see, in the year 2008, the Consumer Price Index went up to 4.1 when people were used to paying 2.5, 3.4, 3.3, and lower. It went down drastically in 2009 and 2010. All right. Why do you think this occurred? And why do you think that it went back up in 2012? So we went 4.1. Then we go down, 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 and then back up to 3.0 in 2012. Many believe this is a product of inflation occurring from the election of Barack Obama. We were in a pretty deep recession. The banks were in trouble. Automobile manufacturing was in trouble. We went into a deep recession right after or during the Obama election. and consumer price index skyrocketed. It starts to go down when the banks are saved, the bond companies are saved, and the auto industry is saved. You saw those go down. In 2012, it goes back up possibly because the changing of the guard when it came to the new election of Barack Obama winning that particular year as well for his second 4-year term. It's curious, though. He wins in this year, and this is the midterms in 2010, and this is the re-election year. So we see that during those volatile years for President Obama, the CPI went up. Tax cap slows the growth of property taxes. If there's a cap on taxes, you can't raise as much money, even when property values and assessments are increasing faster than inflation. It increases the growth of property taxes when property values and assessments are increasing slower than inflation. And realize that tax rates increase when property values decrease. Make sure that you understand that. If the property values of a shopping mall, a skyscraper, of homes in a particular neighborhood, if those values decrease, you have to do what? You have to raise the taxes. Tax rates increase. New construction slows, and the CPI remains at lower levels. Any additions to property are considered changes, also called new property. If you put a swimming pool on your house, that's new property. If you build an addition to your house, another room, if you remodel the basement and you put something that is extended or marketable or tangible real estate within that room, that's labeled as new property. Home additions, new residential and commercial construction, tear downs, rebuilds, etc. So there are exceptions. So yes, you can limit the tax rate by having a tax cap. During a tax cap, you are not supposed to borrow funds. But if you have to borrow funds during a tax cap, those funds should only be for fire prevention, safety bonds, and working cash and funding bonds. During a tax cap, you should not borrow money for things that are considered luxury in a school district or in a city. Debt service extension base. This is the bond and interest levy for non-referendum bonds in the year the cap was approved. The district that levied to pay the principal and interest on referendum limited bonds in the levy year during which the tax cap was approved in that county may issue new limited bonds. So debt service extension is very important to pay attention to because you may have a cash-strapped, property-strapped district that may have to pay debt in the form of getting bonds. Tax caps, of course, can be stressful when small families move out of a community. Well, why do you think that is? Well, if small families move out of community and larger families move in, that puts a stress on school districts. It doesn't necessarily have to take place for a long period of time, but if you have numerous families with no children, just husband and wife, or a single people with homes, those people sell those homes to people with larger families, that can place a stressor on a school district because even though you're paying property taxes on the same home, whether it be the old owner or the new, when you bring new children into a community and you're collecting the same property tax from that home or that building, there's an increase in stress and expense of educating the additional children in the home, but there isn't necessarily an additional property tax that is appended to that home just because you have more children. School districts suffer because in a tax cap where student population grows, the district had expectations of smaller enrollment. Here's the formula for allowable tax extensions. I want to, you really need to study this formula. You don't have to memorize it, but understand that the total extension or the total tax times the inflation factor, you want to take that number over the district's total EAV minus the new construction. So you get the consumer price index or the consumer price inflation times the tax extension over the district's total EAV minus construction. That is what your limiting rate. That's the rate that you would charge residents for their property taxes. So here's an example. If the total extension is $5 million, we put $5 million here. That's the taxes that are collected, times the inflation factor. Let's say the inflation factor is 2%. So in this case, it would be 1.02. The 1 being 1, which means that this number would not change. The 1 times 5 million would be 5 million. The 0.02 is the 2% of inflation factor that we're placing upon this particular allowable tax extension. You take these two numbers and the district's total EAV, let's say it's $210 million. This is the equalized assessed valuation of the property within this particular district. And new construction, let's say it's $10 million in the district. EAV, new construction. You take this number and this number, it's divided accordingly, giving us the limiting rate. If you do so, that rate comes out to 2.5%, 2.55%, or you may get a number of 0.0255, which gives you 2.55%. I want you to do this for one of the quiz questions, and it'll be for the $10 million on 1.03 or 3%, $410,000, and new construction of $20 million. What's the limiting rate on this? I need you to calculate carefully. Enjoy. Have a great week trying to understand the formula for allowable tax extensions and the PTELL, the tax cap.